Hey, my name is Ben. Thanks for stopping by. Today we are working on installing some in-ceiling speakers like you can see behind me here. There's a couple of them in our kitchen. And we are going to be putting some more here in our living room. You pan around over here. And look, this is where our home theater system is. So the speaker placement is a little bit more picky. But we're not going to dwell too much on the placement. It's just more of the installation of an in-ceiling speaker and the things that you need to know for that. So firstly, you're going to want to be pulling wire to your locations. Obviously, my wires are already above the ceiling, thankfully, so we don't have to worry about pulling them right now. But right here is the type of speaker wire that we use. This is 14 gauge wire that is oxygen free. So OFC right here, it says pure OFC, which means pure oxygen free copper. So this is a very high quality copper cable. And this is also rated for in-wall and in-ceiling installations, which is very important. So you can buy regular speaker wire in the store that is not rated for that, where you can kind of see the two separate wires, and those are not supposed to be pulled behind the wall because the needs to be certified by UL or Underwriters Laboratories to be pulled through the walls. So anyway, this is a high quality cable. 14 gauge is as much as you'll ever really need. 16 gauge is probably adequate in most cases. So the difference between this and an inexpensive cable, I'll link to both in the description. So there'll be a high quality 99% oxygen free cable option, and then also kind of your cheap generic one, which would also be a 14 gauge, but the main difference is the cheaper speaker wire is going to be copper clad aluminum, or CCA, versus 100% copper. So pull your 14 gauge wire from a central location. So I have this on kind of a swinging shelf here that's kind of elaborate. My brother-in-law and I built this, but this is our home audio equipment. And it could also be your AV receiver location for where you're going to be controlling your TV and such. So pull for each speaker that you want in your house, pull a dedicated wire from that location all the way back to the central area where you're going to be controlling your speakers. So just don't even bother with running multiple speakers off the same wire in general. It's going to give you a lot more configuration possibilities to pull the wire straight back to that location. So now when you pull it into your location, you're going to want to really make sure that you take good records of where that wire is. You can put a special deal in the ceiling where you can have the drywallers cut that out, but that tends to add a lot of cost. It's called like a rough-in ring. So it would be the size of whatever your speaker is, like this one down here. You'd put a square that protrudes down out of the ceiling where the drywallers would have to cut that out. But I wasn't sure when I'd be adding them, so it just makes more sense to just put it up above the ceiling. So I have measurements written down for where my center point is for each speaker. And so we should be able to cut a hole up there, and if my measurements were right, the speaker wire should be ready to go up there. So here's my notes that I had here. So the one we're doing right now is this speaker. So I have 112.5 inches from the south finished drywall and 10 inches from my chimney, but it's flexible in that direction. You can look up here now. So we have a mark on the ceiling at that point, and we're going to cut a small hole initially and not the full dimensions of the speaker, but we will mark our square first. Pause. So here we have a template that comes with it. A lot of times they'll come with a template. These are square speakers, and I will link to these exact speakers in the description. These are a 6.5 inch woofer. So a lot of times the template is most of the time the template is correct, but you want to just double check. So the size of the hole that I want to cut here is a little over 8, close to 8 1/4, 8 1/8. And so we're just going to make sure that that's the same here. I know that it is already, but just make sure that your template paper is correct. So you don't want to cut a hole in your ceiling and then realize the paper was off. So then after you know that your template is correct, if you're using square ones, you can fold it in half and cut a little notch here, and then fold it in half the other way and do the same thing. And that gives you a perfect hole in the middle where you can once you measure your center point of where you want the speaker to be, you can line that up in the center and see through it. So we'll bring this up on the ladder and mark our square. Hi. So here we're going to put this up on the ceiling. Now, one of the benefits of round speakers, I've lined up the center point here with the little hole that we made a minute ago. One of the benefits of round speakers is you don't have to do this next part, which is we're going to just make sure that this is square by measuring up against a wall to make sure that it's parallel with that, since we do have a square to work with here. So I'll get this lined up, and then we're going to mark this square with a Sharpie. Alright, so our square is marked on the ceiling here now. We're going to cut a smaller hole initially, and the reason we do that is in case my measurement was off and there's a stud right here or something like that, it's going to be easier to shift my hole over. So we're just going to start by cutting that hole, and I got to grab the vacuum cleaner down here. So we're going to use a shop vac at the same time with a drywall dust filter so that we can try to avoid as much dust as possible in a semi-finished environment here. So we will go ahead and turn that on. And so we can see that here we have a certain distance to this line, about 3 inches on both sides. And what you can do is stick your tape measure up in here and make sure that you have at least 3 inches. Oh yeah, we have like 5 inches on that side. And over here, we have, close to 5 inches as well. So we're going to be fine with that. And I can also feel the wire here, the speaker cable, right there. So we are in the right spot. So now we'll go ahead and cut the rest of the square out. So welcome back. This is right below our kids' bedroom, which is kind of funny because they're trying to sleep right now. But hopefully this won't bother them too much. All right, we need to turn the vacuum on again. Alright, so this here, you can see that there's insulation up in this cavity, and that's on purpose. This is not the top floor, this is in between the main level and the upstairs. You want to put a big chunk of insulation above wherever your speaker is going to be. So if you don't have one up there already, you could stuff one up there, but it's going to create just better sound overall just by having a piece of insulation up there. Now a couple things when cutting the drywall, you want to just put your blade through just as far as it has to be, but not any further. And this is a metal blade, so it's kind of a fine tooth blade, so it's not as aggressive. It's not going to rip things apart. And then when it's going through it at kind of an angle, about like this, and that helps it when it does run into the wire, like you can see right up in here. The wires were kind of in the way of where my cut was, but I didn't cut the wires at all because the angle of the blade just kind of glided underneath it instead of like catching it and slicing it off. So the way I anchored these up here, I just had a piece of black tape that I stapled to the stud before the drywall, and I can just break that. Oh, there you go. And now I can pull the wire down. I have about 3 feet of wire hanging down from where the ceiling is. It does 2 kind of cool things. One, you have some flexibility for where to place the speaker, like I was saying earlier, so if I had decided to move it this way, I could have. But the main benefit is that you can strip the wire back down here pretty easily, and then you can also set your speaker on top of the ladder while you hook it up. So now we'll just strip this cable back here. You can see that there's this little layer of aluminum in here That's just cladding to help prevent interference from other wires in the from like power wires and stuff. So we're gonna just trim this off here, making sure we're using the knife safely. And then this is a 14 gauge like we were talking about before. So we're going to use our 14 gauge stranded option here and just strip these back. Well, 3/8 of an inch. 14 gauge. There we go. And now we'll grab our speaker. So we're going to go ahead and put our wires in here. You can see that one is red and one is black, so it's pretty easy to keep them straight. You push these little push connectors and shove the wire in. And as you can see, this is just long enough so that I can twist these ends here a little bit more. So I can still rest the speaker on the ladder. There we go. So that is almost ready to come in. Now these little feet that hold it into the ceiling, you got to flip those back. Make sure that they're in the position where you can slide it into the ceiling. And now we're ready to put it up here. I'm just going to push my extra cable up into the ceiling, slide it across, and then we can push this into the ceiling. And these are just a Phillips screw. Alright, so with these screws, they kind of take quite a while to thread in, but I would suggest doing the first one by hand so that you know kind of how it feels and how far you need to go. With this one, once I get it started, I can feel that it's spinning freer, and then all of a sudden I'll see it tighten up just a little bit, and you want to stop right away because you can break these brackets if you don't. So I'll see if I can show you how to do it. You hear how the drill changed sound a little bit? That means it reached the bottom. So do the same thing on the right. Alright, now these covers, at least for these specific speakers, will just fall right off when you turn on the music. So you need to do a little modification here. On each of these corners, you're just going to take and bend a little spot out on them. It makes it a little bit harder to get the cover on, but it gives the cover a way to grip into the slots so that it doesn't fall out. Now this is obviously wouldn't be necessary for every manufacturer, but depends on how loud you crank up your music too. So they fell out during my test, which means I was turning them up as much as they could go. So probably won't happen and wouldn't happen in reality, but then just push this into place. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully yours will go as smoothly as mine did. Actually, one of the brackets broke on that one. That's the first time that's happened. It's so weird. Anyway, special thanks to Naomi for taking some of the video for me so that I didn't have to attempt to hold the phone and do everything all at the same time. So, but yeah, that's kind of the system. Hopefully you'll get yours figured out really well. Again, links in the description to those speakers, speaker cable, and anything else that I find that might be useful for you. So thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you in the next video. See ya.